Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today on Tech Driven, we're doing something a little bit different. We are doing a build. I have tons of hardware beside me, and I'm really excited because this is, well, okay, the overall hardware of the build is not the newest thing on the planet, and to some it may be out of date, but this is still a really solid machine. And it's kind of a realistic machine of what you can go out and go to your local store and pick up, and that's actually in stock. And that was the goal with this build, was what can I get by going out to my local store and buy everything in store and walk out. And funny enough, like the original goal was just, can I get it within a week, build a machine with whatever's in stock and within a set budget. And just happened to be that my local computer store, one of the larger Ontario retailers, actually had all the items in stock for the best price. Anyways, let's roll the intro and we'll get into the specs. So before I get into the specs, just so you know, there's a PC part picker list below, so you can see the entire list of the specs if I do miss any little thing, but I doubt I will. But that way you can see the current prices in your region. They will all vary. Now, I bought everything here in Canada, in Ontario, and at our local computer store. It just happened to be that the local store here had everything for the best price because of Black Friday, pre-Black Friday sales. I bought everything on Monday. Today's Friday. It's the 20th of November. And yeah, I was surprised that everything was in stock. I didn't have to wait for anything. I did like an in-store pickup, and then once they had everything, kind of the whole PC, like all the parts for the PC together and ready for pickup, I just drove out to the store, got them all, slammed them in my car, and then came home that night on Monday and then built the PC. So let's get into what we have. So the PC itself at the core, originally I was like, okay, we want a PC that can play flight sim. It's mainly going to game. So I'm like, all right, let's do Intel. Haven't done an Intel build in a while. 9700K, maybe 9900K if we can stretch it and find other cheap parts to make it work. Or we do 10th gen Intel, because I'm like, well, that's interesting. I haven't had a chance to play with that yet. So I was like, okay, we can do 10th gen Intel. But based on the current sales and what was available, and looking at overall performance, and maybe inching out that extra 2-3 frames, like extra 10% of performance, it wasn't worth it. So the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X was by far the best bang for buck CPU available right now that I could get. So I went, okay, cool. 8 cores, 16 threads, excellent gaming CPU, excellent productivity CPU. Also only has a 65 watt TDP. Comes with a cooler where all the Intel ones didn't come with a cooler, which means then I have to tack on an extra price. The only downside is the cooler that this comes with, it's a little bit noisy. So I did tweak the fan curves a bit, but when you're running 3D Mark and it hits the CPU bench, oof, she spins up. She spins up. So I made some tweaks and then ramped in the case fans too as well to help bring the cool air in and also evacuate the hot air as fast as possible. But I also have low noise fans in the case. So they only spin up to 1200 RPM, but they have a very aggressive curve. And once they're at full speed, you don't hear them anyways. You still hear this guy. But that's a cheap upgrade, about 40 bucks, 50 bucks. You can get a Hyper 212. But overall, it's not the biggest thing. It's not that noisy. So that's the only thing I was kind of disappointed. I actually never ran the AMD stock cooler on my system because I just put a water block on it day one. Anyways, video card. We went with RDNA 1. Didn't go with a 6800. There was literally none available in Canada. So 5700 XT, this is the Gigabyte Gaming OC. So this is actually a really good budget-oriented option. It's not like a Strix, it's not an Aorus, it's not one of the MSI gargantuan beasts that they came out with. This is it's a triple axle fan, but it's really well sized, it's really well priced, and it actually gets good thermals. It's not noisy. The VRAM actually sits at a decent temperature level. And within the AMD Adrenalin software, you could then ramp in the fans a bit more, and even at 50%, you don't hear it. So it's a solid card, and it actually came in at the cheapest price out of any other AMD 5700 XT out there on the market. Originally, I was looking at a Power Color Red Devil because At the time, looking at PC Part Picker, that was the cheapest. And then the problem is PC Part Picker is not very good at picking up Canada computers for some reason. I don't know why. Went to their website, and this guy was on sale. So it was cheaper by like 50 bucks. I said, deal, buying it. Solid card, really happy with it. Motherboard, went B550 because I wanted PCI Express Gen 4. God for, if you ever want to do Gen 4 storage, or, the graphics card is also Gen 4, even though it will work on 3.0. But let's just go with the newest motherboard. It was at a good price, came with Wi-Fi built in, no BIOS flashing required. It just works out of the box. I wanted no hassles. I just wanted everything to be able to put it together, and it works. And it has the biggest thing with this B550 Aorus Pro, it has built-in Wi-Fi and built-in Bluetooth, which is awesome because that was one of the requirements for the build. Super solid motherboard, all black look, no silly colors. And once you turn the RGB off, if you want it off, it's just a plain good looking motherboard. It has a good VRM, good heat sinks. I really like it. The only thing is, the BIOS and how to flash the BIOS, I'm not a fan of, and the fan controls, you have to do it through the BIOS only. You can't do it within Windows that I've found at this point in time. So those are the only complaints I have with it, but overall it's a solid board. It was cheaper than the Asus B550 Strix motherboard I have, which was $230 Canadian, and this was $219 Canadian, I believe. So it's a little cheaper, and this has built-in Wi-Fi where the Strix doesn't. You have to spend like $260 Canadian to get the Wi-Fi on the Strix. So good motherboard, really like it. Also came with a bunch of zip ties and lots of stickers. Power supply, went with a Corsair RM650X, 10-year warranty, 80 plus gold, which is really nice, and fully modular. Fairly small, compact unit. Fan hardly runs, you barely hear it. It's a really, really good unit. Cables are all black, which is a bonus for cable, just overall aesthetics of a build, and cable management was really easy with this power supply. And it came with 2 EPS 8 pins, and those also break down to 4 pins. So if you are running a motherboard that requires that, this has it. I was going to go with a Seasonic, which it didn't. And I went, okay, you know what? For longevity of the system and power supplies you usually use for 2-3 builds, because they just last forever, I went with this instead. Really solid unit. Really like it. All right, let's move on to the storage and the RAM. So the RAM, I don't have the package on me, but I went with G.Skill memory. It's 32 gigabytes, 3600 megahertz, C19 timings. Not the craziest timings, but it fit the price. Had no RGB, which this is kind of a going trend with the system. We're not running any crazy lights. It's a very stealth build, very underrated build. It's a solid kit. It's got red heat spreaders, which I wanted the black ones, but they were not in stock locally. So I went with the red ones instead. As for storage, we went with a WD Black NVMe SN750 drive. Now, this is a 500 gig version. You can get these with a heat spreader put on them, as well as you can get them up to 1 terabyte, and I think even a 2 terabyte model. I use these personally. Very, very solid SSDs, really fast for a boot drive. For storage, I went with a 1 terabyte SSD. It's a Team Group one, so it's the GX2 2.5 inch SATA SSD. It's a little more budget friendly, still pretty fast, good SSD, and this is kind of the setup I use personally too. So go for a really good boot drive, a little more budget orientated data drive, or for your games. This is still plenty fast for games and for everything you need else. I added 2 extra case fans because the case only came with 2 fans, and they're just some Fractal Design Silent Series R3s with a white blade, no LEDs, no nothing. They come with a black 3-pin cable. They're not PWM, so that's just something to keep in mind, but they are pretty cheap. They come in like a very basic brown box. They're just a rifle bearing. They're not ball bearing. They're not a fluid dynamic bearing or anything, or maglev or anything like that. So they're very budget orientated, very quiet, even at full speed at 1200 RPM. So let's make space for the case. Oh, hey, that worked. It's here. Okay, cool. I guess that snapping thing actually does work on YouTube. Interesting. Anyways, the case, a Fractal Design Meshify C. And I already have the side panel off, but it is a solid side panel. So no tempered glass. That's the other thing about this build. So no RGB, no tempered glass, all AMD. Pretty interesting build. And it's the only things that I really planned were no extra lights and because he said no tempered glass because it's going under his desk. I said, okay, then we'll go with the solid side panel case if I can. It was never really like, it has to be this. It was just, get me something that can perform really well within my budget, and that should be fairly reliable. I said, okay, cool. So I went with, basically, it's just a no-frills system. So Meshify C, absolutely love it. It has got great ventilation in the front, so no tempered glass. So full mesh front panel, dust filtered, so you just pull off the front. There's a dust filter on the bottom for your power supply, which is great. There's a removable magnetic dust filter at the top, but why would you want that? Because you're exhausting air at the top, so you're just restricting airflow. It's a really solid build. As you can see, it came out really clean. I added the 2 fans in the front to intake cool air. There's 2 fans at the back that exhaust air, so we have a very balanced airflow. It has the nice power supply shroud, so your power supply is in there. There's extra hard drives, 2 hard drive bays here in the bottom if you want to add 3.5-inch drives, as well as there's a mount on the back for 3 SSDs as well. So that's really nice. It has a nice cable management tray, really good rubber grommets. There's 2 big ones at the top, plenty of room. This case really surprised me. It's a very, very easy case to build in. And if anyone's looking for a compact mid-tower, I would highly recommend a Meshify C. And now with the Meshify 2 coming out, I would love to see the improvements that Fractal has made. So I'm really happy with this case. Really, really solid choice. Now, let's head over to the time lapse of me building it. So I hope you enjoyed the time-lapse and little montage of building of the system. Again, as I said earlier, the Meshify C is a fantastic case, easy case to build in. I absolutely adore it. For the price, you cannot go wrong. The only reason why I've never built in it is because the Corsair IQ 220T, for the price, same size, except for it came with 3 fans. This only came with 2, and the builds that I was doing, for the 2 builds I'm going to be doing in those, or the 1 build I've done in that case, and the 2nd build I'm doing in that case, they both saw, okay, yeah, RGB is cool, and I want RGB, where in this build it was solid side panel, no RGB, no frills, no nothing. So this fit that perfectly. I absolutely love fractal cases. Anyways, I've been really happy with every single one I've had a chance to play with. Comparing this system to my system, specs are very similar between the two. 3800X, 3700X, both have 32 gigs of RAM, both use the same SSDs, pretty much, at least for boot. Both I mentioned 32 gigs of RAM, 5700 XT versus 1080 Ti FE, that's overclocked, and in Time Spy, non-extreme, just regular Time Spy, my system scores a 10,694 points, so I'm really, really close to the 10,700, and I want to break that, but that's currently my highest score, and the highest score I got with this system was a 9,242 points. So it's about 15% behind. Not huge, but overall, still a solid performer. The fact that you can get all these components in stock, it makes it a really solid system. You know, you should have no problem playing Flight Simulator based on the, and that was the biggest requirement, was I want a system that can play Flight Sim. This should have no problem playing Flight Sim, no problem playing Assetto Corsa, or any other kind of simulator games, and I don't know if he's going to get into Counter-Strike or maybe some Doom, but this system will have zero issue doing that. So fairly awesome, and maybe if he gets into Cyberpunk, it should be able to play that no problem, as NVIDIA and Cyberpunk just announced the system requirements, so that'd be really awesome. But yeah, really happy with this computer. It's not too loud, besides the stock CPU cooler does ramp up a little bit, but when you are under gaming workloads, like I played a little bit of Doom Eternal, it doesn't ramp up too bad. It's only when you're doing straight CPU, it starts going. And as I said, Hyper 212 would fix that, or a Noctua cooler would fix that, with bigger fans, and they're just much quieter than the little fan that's on here. So yeah, that's it. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to like, subscribe, and smash the stuff down at the bottom and the bell. Anyways, I'm off to shoot this week's news video, but this will be up probably a little bit after that. Yeah, and if you did enjoy it, there's more builds to come and more content to come. Stick around and see you in the next one.